Okay, we'll make a start. So welcome everybody to Climate Emergency Standing Committee. As you can see, because I'm sitting in the chair's seat, I was elected as new committee chair for the Climate Emergency Committee. So thank you to councillors for putting me in this position, and I hope I can support the committee going forward over the next year. Obviously we've got members of the public who are members of the committee, or potentially will be re-voted as members of the committee shortly. But does anyone wish to speak as a member of the public before we make a start? Because there's no one here who is just a member of the public. No? Okay. Okay, right, we've got two new councillors who have joined. Obviously we've got Councillor Davies and Councillor Blacker, who've previously been parish councillors, and I know Councillor Davies was obviously the chair before. Councillor Blacker, I can't remember, were you on this committee before? No. No, right. Right, well, we welcome Councillor Blacker to the committee, and we also welcome Councillor Mark Bustard and Councillor Andy Wilson, who are both relatively new parish councillors, so we're delighted they've joined this committee. So just for the benefit of the other members, can I ask you, Councillor Bustard, just a couple of words about yourself?
Yeah, I live off Duncan Road, on Underbank Road. I'm parish councillor for Holmford Central. My day job is I run a company that does consultancy, project management and delivery for events.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wilson?
Andy Wilson. I live on Brownwood Lane in Goldbridge. I represent the Upperthorne ward. What do I do in my spare time? I'm retired. I don't do a lot. I'm an ex-engineering manager, so I'm into all sorts of things engineering-wise. Those tend to be my interests, along with keeping fit and cycling and things.
Okay, super. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on to the sort of first formal bit on the agenda, which is public bodies, which is just to say that this meeting is being recorded just in audio format. Obviously we're in Haydedge Band Hall tonight, which was, whilst the regulations have changed today, we thought, given that there may have been quite a large number of people, we thought we wanted to keep social distancing where possible. So thank you for bearing with us with coming up here, if it was a longer journey for some of you to make it, obviously more convenient for some. And we're also just recording on audio because we've struggled a bit with some of the technology to make the YouTube connection work here, where I think there's no Wi-Fi for a start. But so we're working on that because we want to be able to stream our meetings, not just provide audio recordings in the long run. But we're sort of trying to get over that hurdle at the minute. So the next item to accept apologies for absence. Rich?
We've got apologies from Councillor Darrell Gould. He's isolating, from Frances Bennett. She was hoping to get. You've got back. Sorry. Frances was working away and she was hoping to get here. Sorry. Steve Barker is likely to miss the meeting, but so I'm assuming he has missed it. And Kath is missing it, and Caroline.
Okay. Thank you for that. Right, does anyone have any personal or disclosable pecuniary interests in items on the agenda? No? Okay, thank you. Are there any written requests for new DPIs, Rich?
There aren't, no.
Okay, and is there anything that anyone thinks should be discussed in private session? No? Okay. Right, so the first item is to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting, so hopefully you've all had those in your meeting pack. So, Councillor Davies, do you want to propose?
I'll move it, please.
Okay, all those in favour? Sorry, it's only councillors voting on this anyway. But
Sorry.
yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Right, so the first item is to elect a new vice chair of the committee. So, obviously, I say obviously, not necessarily, but the vice chair has to be one of the councillors. I'm afraid it can't be the members of the committee. So, do we have any nominations?
Yeah,
Is that a
I
nomination?
nominate Mary Blacker, Councillor Blacker.
Okay. Does anyone want to second that? Okay, great. All right, all those in favour? No, sorry, I should check. Was there anyone else who was wanted to do it. Okay,
I think
super.
I think the speeder was the handsman. That
Suggested not. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Councillor Blackett, much appreciated. In due course, you'll be able to come and sit here, but you just get the gap, so I'd stay there if I were.
is this the first committee with an all female chair and vice chair? Have we managed that?
Don't know. Possibly. I'm sure it's happened in the past. It's not that weird.
I thought we'd done something remarkable. Never mind.
Okay, right. The next item is to elect the co-opted members to the committee, up to a maximum of 10. So, I'm conscious we've obviously got 5 of you here. So, I suppose the first question is: have we had anyone else apply to wish to?
Well, certainly Caroline said she intended to apply again. The others just gave their apologies. They didn't say anything about wanting to join, but I got the impression that they would be coming to a next meeting.
Okay. So has anyone said that they're not wishing to carry on?
Nobody said that they're not. Nobody said that, no.
Right, okay. I suppose we ought to vote each one in turn, should we? For completeness.
All right, okay.
Are we happy to...
Yeah.
Unless we read out the list. Should we just read out the list?
Yeah, I think last time we just read
Okay.
the list, I think.
So we've got Matthew Tully, John Queening, it's a good test for me, this, isn't it? Andrew Colwell, Greta Bailey, Bradley, sorry, not Bailey, sorry. Francis Bennett, and then could you read out the other names we've
Steve Barker, Kath O'Halloran, Caroline Anstey.
got? Okay, so that's 8. Is that right?
She could make it to the meeting, but there's a possibility of another lady that might want to join. So
Yeah, good.
Called Tash Etty Morgan, I think it is. I can't remember.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
know the name, yeah.
I'm meeting her for a meeting tomorrow to see.
Okay. What I would suggest then is that we take a vote on electing those 8 people, or re-electing those 8 people, and then if that person then wishes to consider joining, then we'll bring it to the next meeting.
Okay.
Can I ask you, did you mention Alison Morgan? Is she on the
Oh, I
Yes.
didn't. No, I didn't. No, I didn't get an apology from Alison.
Okay. But so, is anyone aware of her not wanting to continue? So should we assume that she's willing to continue, and if she wants to step off, then it's easier for her to... Yeah, okay.
Because she's leading the work on
Yeah, land use, isn't she?
And,
Yeah. Okay.
So I would.
Okay. Right, well, we'll work on the basis that Alison Morgan wishes to continue. So is that everyone?
Yeah.
I think that's everyone.
That is everyone. That is, I'm just thinking of all the various things we drive in. So Steve's driving with Francis, we've got Alison and Andrew on the line. Obviously, yourself.
They must be on that meeting.
Steve Barker's on energy, yeah. So Steve,
Okay.
yeah. you cover
Right,
that.
can I propose then that we reappoint all those members that I've previously listed?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favour? From the councillors? Okay, super, that's carried. Right, welcome to the committee again. Right, so moving swiftly on to item 20, which is our expenditure against budget. There is a budget report that you will all have seen. It's item C in your pack. And effectively we've not spent a huge amount. I don't know if Rich, you want to? Is there anything to bring our attention to? particularly? Obviously, we're early in the financial year anyway, so.
Not hugely. Only to make the point again that I made last time that we'll probably need to move some money to community mobilisation at some point because of the climate emergency coordinator's salary. Basically,
Yeah.
it's a bit under resourced, or will be by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions or things they want to raise about it? Councillor David?
Yeah, just I think we discussed this last week as well. There are some items that are pending though, in terms of
Yeah.
in CAF, in transport.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's, although we're underspend, we know that
Yeah.
there's going to be something coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll regard that all as noted then. Thank you. So item 2 under that is to approve the expenditure of £600 on a carbon calculator for the Home Valley Climate Action website. So could I ask you, Michelle, to comment on that?
So basically, we all agreed at the last meeting that we would work with Kirklees in order to create this call it an app, something on the website where people can record how they've done any activities towards saving carbon emissions in Home Valley. But then Kath got the grant to do the campaign that we're doing, the If It's Not Far, Leave the Car, and said, oh, I can kind of cover the cost for that in this particular campaign. However, forgot that she'd actually said that, so suddenly we got the bill, and so therefore we have kind of committed to spending money that hasn't been allocated for it. And so yeah, that's where we're at.
So the cost of the carbon calculator itself is £600, is that
Yeah,
right?
that is not just for one thing. The idea is that it's a calculator that will be able to be utilised further and further for anyone to record stuff. It's going to be, at the moment, all it's going to do is record if you leave your car at home, how many miles you've done, and convert that into carbon emissions that you've saved. But it has been designed so that we can add things like I put less water in, I shower more than bath, and all that sort of thing over a long period of time. And what it will do is we'll have it on the website, and you'll have an addition, thanks to John, we'll be calculating how much we've actually done, and it'll be a visible way of saying what activities we've done and how everybody in the Home Valley is contributing towards it. So that's what it's about. But we did say that we would do it with Kirklees.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I think this is fine because one is no longer my portfolio on Kirklees, so I'm not responsible for the climate change agenda anymore. So I can say no, but the issue with that is Kirklees is working with West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and it's going to take longer. So therefore it makes perfect sense for us to do it because it's going to be a little way off now. I wouldn't be shocked if it's another 6 months or more before they actually get something, because once you start doing something quicker, it tends to lengthen and stuff out. So this does make sense to do it ourselves.
Is it possible that if Kirklees decide they want to utilise it, that we can get them to give us some funds retrospectively?
Anything is possible.
Okay, I just think...
Whether it's likely is another question.
Okay,
but
yeah.
Well, let's talk about it, and then we can. I think it would be good to share that anyway with the Kirklees team, which we could do to show what we're doing, because they're always interested in what we're doing in this committee. So absolutely we should do that, and it might be something. It could be something that they see as being useful for other parish councils and town councils, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't. But anyway, we can look at it. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question about who's designing it?
The guy that's designed our website,
right.
He's doing it.
Okay. And any changes to make it sort of do more things, would we then have to go back and pay for those changes? Or
I've asked him to design it so that we can just add in additional questions, and he went through it with me, and so it looks like we just add in another set of questions, and the calculation is just done automatically.
Yeah.
Just you've added a question, and it does, you put a number in, and then it just calculates and adds it to the total. So therefore I am suspecting that that's it, we've got it, and then we can modify it how we want.
So it feels like a way of evidencing the progress that we're making, rather than just
Absolutely.
generally saying we're reducing carbon emissions.
This is where it came from, because
Yeah.
we're doing all this activity, but at the moment we've got no way of saying to anybody what we've done apart from going, oh, we started at this, and John going, right, we're here now. And also that's us. What we want is the community to get involved and actually report what they're doing, because that's what this whole thing's about. It's not just about these people in this room. We're wanting to get the community involved. So that's, for us, I think that's the way of depicting it.
Sorry, I was going to ask John, you've had a look at it as well, have you, John?
Yeah, it's a challenge because we obviously did the original, Matthew and I did it. It was a top-down approach, which we started at the top and then worked down. And the problem is that, as you said, from point of engagement, you've got to work from bottom up. It's actually, I still think we could do it at both ends. I agree with what Michelle is doing in terms of being able to show how individual actions are. But I think also we should carry on with the top down to show, because a large amount of the change that's happening is actually from central government, or it's coming down through legislation and through plans or something, and we need to relate the two together, because even when people do this, they can work out they've saved half a ton of carbon. So they're going to ask, well, what does that mean? We understand that when you're saving £30, what it means. It's different from saving £3,000. If somebody says, I'm going to save a kilo of carbon or half a tonne, it's very difficult to get the money. So I think we've got to tackle it from both ends, and this is a step as Michelle. So I'm supportive, but I think we also, and I've been talking with Michelle about how we could do that from on our 10-year journey to zero carbon, 2030.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Just a question, Michelle. Are the units kilos of carbon or CO2?
Yeah, because
Because of small projects and things.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
great.
because Kat said that's the most universal way of doing it. So yes, it's key.
So kilos of CO2. And the other thing is, if it's being used by the general public, which is great, presumably we have a moderator clause. So somebody says they've saved 1 trillion tonnes.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can override.
It'll be the idea being as well, which I haven't mentioned, is that we'll be able to go into the back of it, and we're going to add questions like, are you male, female, age bracket, and so forth. So then we can start going, right, in the Home Valley it seems that women care more, children care more, or things like that. I'm making those up, but you know. But the Home Valley Review will like stories like that, as will the Huddersfield Examiner. So the idea is, at the moment it's quite simple, but the idea is that we can add in more and more questions. However, there's that thin line between asking too many questions so people get put off by putting the information in. So we're going to try and make it as easy as possible to create. So if you think of anything that you think, actually that'd be really good if we captured that information when people are putting it in, let me know. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say on that basis, I propose that we authorise that payment.
Okay. Does anyone like to second that proposal? Okay. Thanks. All right. All those in favour? So that's £600 approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, right, the third one, this is another one for you, Michelle, which is about the Great Big Green Week pop-up event.
Right.
If you could tell us a bit about it. I know we've got a document that's told us a bit about it.
Yeah. But I'll just, I mean,
Talk us through the key
I'm guessing that most of you haven't had an opportunity to read that particular document. So, basically, before we planned a whole big event, which was going to be our quarterly update to people. So basically, there is a national Great Big Green Week, event week, and so we've already done the planning for an event here, so I just have taken what we had already planned and put it together to do it for this Great Big Green event. Now there's 2 Saturdays, the 18th is a Saturday and the 25th I think, on those 2 days. So I thought that we pick a date and we'll do all of these activities, which is not just us as a committee, it's actually involving the whole community, looking at other people that are doing things that are relevant to the climate emergency. So I've got to go and talk to the co-op again, but they were willing to host it, so it'd be a venue. We also are going to do something on the bridge. So the idea is things like, we'll also, the money side of it is from Fair and Funky for the smoothie bike, because that's something for people to do so that they can cycle and make smoothies, creating electricity. And I've forgotten what the other thing was for. What was it? Poster. Oh, print and for the posters and so forth. We won't be doing any brochures, but they need to be designed, and so we pay somebody to design it. So that's what that's about. So there's lots of activities. That's why it's so long, that we've planned already. So it's literally just getting in touch with those people again and getting them to commit to a date, and then we can do a nice big event in September that we're running, but we're doing it in conjunction. And that's the whole idea. The event is for climate and nature. It's events all across the country, so if we don't take part in it as a climate emergency committee, we are failing, I believe. So the other option is we can do little things all through the week, but I just think it's easier if we're trying to get people to come along, we just do one thing on one day and people can come and attend. Things like John's plastic bottle display and things like that will be something that we'd have, and gazebos and things. So yeah, so there's a lot of things in there, but that's what the budget is for.
Can I just start, because I'm conscious that I know in September, the 18th, so Saturday the 18th is the same day as Honley Show.
Oh, is it?
And it's that weekend, the 17th and 19th is the Home Firth Arts Festival, because that's moved. So
definitely not
so,
that one.
so I would suggest it's the 25th.
Okay.
If it was, because I wasn't sure if you were suggesting both Saturdays,
No,
but I
just
think
one.
that first Saturday is going to be pretty chocker, and the
Okay.
bridge may already be being used.
Absolutely, thanks for
So,
that, yeah. I'd only got as far as remembering we got this meeting and I better tell you about it, so I hadn't looked at the date.
I'm sure there'll be other community things, because everything's sort of cascading into September, really, isn't it? But
Because of,
I'm just
yeah.
aware that, because we've seen grant applications for those, you see, that's
Okay.
then. Yeah.
Just, I remember, obviously we went through all this before, blended, etc. So are the co-op happy for us to have the stall for the site to co-op again, as we discussed?
I haven't asked them yet.
Oh, right.
So I'm asking you guys, because I just had to come to I had to ask for the money because I won't have it
Fine.
until October otherwise, which happened to me before. So, but I went to, the co-op they invited lots of people, but only myself and one other group, the library group turned up, should I say. They are desperately wanting to do as many community activities as possible and work with us. So I'm really get on very well with Chrissy Leyland, and so I know if I approach her, she'll do everything she can, and we've got plenty of time this time. They were going to do it last minute last time, but now I've got a good few weeks, so I'm very confident that they will help.
Yeah, no,
And if they can't, you see, we've got the Home Firth Tech car park. We've got lots of different places I've thought of, so, but I'm sure the co-op would help us.
and the manager there was very keen to work with us.
Lee,
Up
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sounds good.
So that's what.
Can I just ask another
Yes, of
question?
course.
Just because obviously you've identified £350 for Fair and Funky's media bike, it's fine. But I'm conscious there's a few other things listed as equipment required, which
Yeah,
some of which
there's
have
no-
obviously sourced from somewhere else. But I'm just conscious of whether the £600 for printing design is also enough to cover some of these other things you've got, like.
No. Everything else
other
that
things.
is on there, as far as I know, and because I went through this before, it's other people. We're not handing out
Okay.
brochures, it's the design of them.
Yeah.
The social media's free, printed material, a banner, that's included in that price. Equipment, gazebo, we'll beg, borrow and steal from people. Matthew, did you keep the one from there? We've got one from the Yorkshire Motorsport Festival,
Yeah.
and Home Pride have a massive one that they said before they lend us.
Yeah.
Tables from the Civic Hall. So
Okay.
a lot of the
Okay.
stuff I was trying to do it as cheap as possible.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm just making sure that we're not missing.
Yeah, no, thank you, because I did look through it and there was nothing else that I could see that would cost us anything
Okay.
at this stage.
Yeah, that's good. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments about the plan to have that? I think the onus will probably be on lots of us to support it in terms of being.
Thanks, Rach.
Available.
You just took the cat's copy, you took the words just out of my mouth. I was about to say, and a lot of you will have to be helping me to volunteer.
Will there be some information circulated that we're sending anything out about, just so we've got it written down? So I don't know, I've captured lots of the information.
Say it again, sorry, John.
Will you be sending out little information or an email about what
There's the document in here that I sent out that you've got. That was in the
It's in the meeting.
documents that, yeah.
It's in the meeting pack.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in the meeting pack,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah. And it's got all the details in there.
Okay, fine, thanks.
So we want Eco Homes is listed on there, for instance. So
Yeah, because I'm thinking if there's because things like if Home Pride are supporting obviously lending their gazebo, whether there's an opportunity as well for some of those groups to promote what they do.
that was the idea as
Yeah.
well, like River Home Connections.
Yeah.
I spoke to them last time and they were like, yeah, we'll get involved. In fact, they couldn't when we were going to do it the day we were before, but they probably hopefully can now. Albion Cycles, all the Max bikes that do electric bikes and so on. There's loads of people that we reached out to who were all keen for it. I went to Yorkshire Water, so I've already got all the stuff from them to do it, to promote about how to save water and
Oh,
things.
brilliant. Okay.
So that's in there as well. So the idea is that it's about, and I'm going to get to them as soon as possible because they probably will know about it, any of these groups that are environmentally friendly. So get in touch with them to say be part of ours rather than try and do their own individual thing, because a mass thing is much more impactful than little bits and pieces.
Okay.
I feel like a right school teacher because I have to do that to see.
Do we? I know you probably investigated before, but do we need to get a temporary events
We do,
license?
for the bridge we do, and
that's the easy.
yeah,
Okay. But there's a time frame that goes with it, isn't there? So we just need to make sure we don't miss that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
I can send you the contact one.
yeah.
Okay. I can't remember if you have to pay for it. Is that 21 quid? I think it is. What was as well.
It was, yeah, it was pretty low because normally we don't have to do anything, but if you're doing any sort of demonstrations or anything, you have to pay for it, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's why we were doing it, because we thought we'd do some of the demonstrations with bikes and different things in there. So and it was low. I can't remember the price, but it wasn't low.
In which case, can I propose that we authorise a cost up to £1,000 rather than 950, so we can cover that event
Yeah.
notice and anything we haven't. And obviously, if we spend less than that, great.
Yeah.
But then there's a little bit of a window above what you
Yeah.
said.
Okay.
So is anyone happy? Sorry, Matthew. Before we
Yeah,
vote on
no,
that.
the question is public liability insurance. Is each of the organisations going to do that themselves? Or we're not
That's a
bothering?
good question.
But the Motor Sport Festival, we have to do it.
We'd have to check whether what our current insurance covers, won't we? Because we have organised
What are they doing?
events in the past.
What's
We may just be able to add to the cover that we've got. Sorry.
What are the people doing?
Which people?
The activity that would need individual cover.
Other than getting on a bike and making your own smoothie, they might do test cycling of the electric bikes, depending on if the company's providing them and are happy to do that. But it's not. That's the thing. It's not us. The smoothies is not us. The bikes are not us.
You just need copies of their insurance documents and you'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let's put the price in just in case we do have to do anything.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, if we don't spend it, we don't spend it, but it's covered. But I didn't think about that because I'm thinking I'm not, as a member of the parish council, I'm not asking anyone to do anything. It's actually the people that we're doing it with that will be asking people to do things.
Well, we can near it. Obviously, we've got a parish council insurance policy that covers a number of different things, but we can just double check whether there's anything we need to add into that once we're finalised what everything's happening.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a good idea to get certainly an insurance from Albion Cycles if they're going to have electric bikes going.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't
well-
think he would do that, but there's another person that might. So
I think they were last time when we investigated, they weren't too sure about letting people have a go on the bikes.
Albion Cycles said definitely not, but is it Max Bikes, I think, that actually hire them out? And also I'll be going to Kew and EPIC, because they weren't around before, to see about them as well.
Yeah.
So there's a few different places, but there might be that available.
Okay. All right. Super. So I suppose, conscious our next meeting won't be till after that event.
Exactly.
I think we'll just have to, obviously, Michelle will be working out more detail on it, and then we'll making sure that we can all support it in the most productive way that we can.
Yeah.
So going back to, I think I proposed a budget of up to £1,000 to pay for posters and supporting materials and any necessary insurances and licences, and the fair and funky smoothie bike. So up to £1,000. So you second that? So all those in favour? The councillors, please. Okay, super. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks for that. Right, back to the agenda. Okay. Goodness, it's going to be you again, Michelle. Don't put your papers down. Right, item 21, mobilisation group. Climate action mobilisation. Climate emergency coordinator to report.
Oh, right. So this is my feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, I shall use my summary. So I know that you've all seen this, but so the biggest, I did print a little copy of it, the summary poster that I did pass around to everybody. So update. I mean, I've mentioned some of this already, but we got the water fountain, and we had a piece in the Home Valley Review about that. Repair cafes. That's Caroline Hinkley. No, that's my friend, Caroline Hansty. Transport. We worked with Art Week. I know that Matthew and Greta may be giving you some information back, but we worked with Art Week and did a campaign with them, and that is continuing on through. Well, we'll probably do it indefinitely, actually. But I'll let you guys get into more detail about that. I can't show things tonight because we're not connected up, but the website, please go and have a look. It's got a lot more information on it. It's got a video quiz, climate quiz, so that people can go and play it. It's got the lovely Councillor Davies introducing it all. It's got the video of Matthew talking about electric vehicles and so forth. It's also got a lot of content about what we've completed and achieved around environment and land use. around the energy audit that's taken place. So the social media, we're now at a point that we can actually take that to the next level of trying to encourage people to do more and to sign up to our social media and start talking about things we're doing. The website will go live this week, the new version of it, but the content has already been done, which is what I was working on. I think, yeah, we didn't do anything to promote the website because we wanted people to go and see the new one, all singing and all dancing, because once people go and have a bad experience, they never go back again. We're all human beings, we know that. So now that they can go back to that, and yeah, that's energy, mobilisation. But I think the rest of the stuff that's happened, each of the individual action groups is going to report on it. And then the other big thing is the energy booklet's finished. So that's ready for download and that's on the website as well.
Okay, super, thank you for that. Okay, well I think we'll probably touch on each bit in all the subsequent sections, and then we can pick up anything that people are aware of that hasn't been touched on. So, move on to the energy, housing and, sorry, we'll go on to the subgroups feedback. So energy, housing and buildings, which in brackets covers home energy efficiency measures, energy savings booklet, audit of parish council buildings and renewables. I think we've had an email from Steve Barker on this, which...
I've got it in front of me.
Yeah, I've got it here as well.
They're all complete. The audits are complete, and we've had the reports back, and Steve is now looking at them, and we have a meeting next week, I think, with them to go through them. And the energy savings booklet, as Michelle said, is ready to go on the website.
Yeah. Okay, super duper. Yeah, so I think, well, just to expand on what Fran's just said, looking at Steve's email. Have you all seen Steve's email? I was just going to say, it looks like the key things are that obviously the as you say, the audits have happened, and both the Civic Hall and Honley Library are very engaged in the process, which is good. It seems trustees Honley are particularly excited about opportunities, so that's also good.
We'll be reporting back.
Yeah, and then obviously we'll hear what's going to happen afterwards. Presumably there's a printed document that's...
Yes, I think we just need to meet up with them and just have a few queries and iron out things before we report back.
Do we think these are the sort of documents that we would then put on our website at all, just to give people an understanding of how detailed an audit would be? Because I think
everything we do needs to be visible, and that's, that was part of the reason for creating the separate website from the one on the council, because then we can update it all the time with all the stuff that we're doing. So yeah, definitely.
Because I was thinking actually, people who run other community buildings like various village halls and that sort of thing may find it useful, even if only to see, well, a similar aged building, these are the sort of things that came up, and if there's anything that catches their eye. So I think sharing it is a good idea. Okay. Sorry, Matthew beat you to it.
Yeah, question on the energy audits. Was the question, how do the buildings become zero carbon by 2030? Or was it, how can we save energy a bit?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Was the question for the audit, how can buildings be changed to make them zero carbon by 2030? Or was it...
No, I think it was audit of their energy use.
So does it include some recommendations?
Recommendations,
to zero?
Yeah.
To zero. Good.
Okay, well, we'll see. Do you got, if we just Paul and then...
Okay, yeah, it was only a quick one, just to come back and say on the document. Yep, I think because the website's up now, you're right, let's share that. It'd be good as well, I can point the Kirby's team towards that as well, so they can see what's happening, so there may be some things they can pick up from that as well. So it's not just, I think, the smaller groups. I think it can be useful for Kirby's as well. So
I think also Honley Library and Holmfirth Civic Hall, we want them to be sharing that information through their networks as well.
Yeah.
So I'll just bring Andy and then Michelle. That's right. Andy?
Yeah, so it was a good point about all these other buildings, like village halls. Is there any way that we could help them if they were wanting to do something, or offer some help?
Yeah, well, they could apply through our grants scheme. So we've just kind of rebadged it, but basically it was community assets support grants, which were up to £5,000, and we have deliberately asked for people to look for sustainability or environmental measures. They're sort of encouraged. But we could also signpost people towards things like the Bright Green Energy Trust, which, sorry, I've given it its wrong name. Greta will correct me. What's it? Yeah, that one.
Community Trust.
Yes, Bright Green Community Trust.
Yes, open now until the 31st of July.
Yeah.
Just thinking it's something we can specifically point these people to.
Yeah.
Sent it to Michelle, haven't you, Michelle?
Yeah, but you're saying we should proactively go out to people who've got a village hall and say, why don't you apply to get that done? We do not have the capacity to go out and do that. I think we just need to sort of spread the word verbally and let people do it themselves, because
We can make the suggestion on the website.
Yes.
If audits have been done in these old buildings.
because that would involve,
And you can follow it up by applying for a grant to do it on your building. So I think we can make that suggestion on the website.
Can signpost it, can't we?
Yeah, but to your point, do you know who all the people are that you'd have to contact for each of these village halls? That's the question. And then therefore,
I know some in the locality.
Therefore,
it might be good to contact them and say.
therefore I'm pass that to you. That's a job for you to do.
Something we can all do within our own.
Wards, yeah, ideally all councils could do it within their wards.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Mary?
Sorry, that is exactly what I was going to say, because as councillors, I mean, we're responsible for a particular patch, and we should have a knowledge of which groups are active in that patch. So I think we should take that responsibility on us. All councillors.
Again, sorry, one thing is to do the audit and the other is to do the actions that will get to zero. So for instance, in this one you've got no energy lights, but you've got gas central heating and stuff. So to move away from gas will cost a lot of money. There's not a lot of point in getting some audits done unless we understand what the follow through is. So it's pretty worth looking at the initial 2 audits and seeing just how much can be done with the cash available before raising people's expectations. Otherwise, there's a chance you say to somebody, we'll get an audit done on your hall, but by the way, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I don't think we were offering to do audits. I think it was more people taking some of the learning and then seeing what they could apply for. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah, but I think also, because I'm conscious their conversation I've had with the folk of Brockholes Village Hall, they're keen to replace their boiler, but at the moment there aren't any viable options on the market, and therefore they're going to keep their boiler ticking along as best they can until the market is ready for hydrogen boilers or whatever to be purchasable. So there are sort of groups thinking of that, and they've already said to us, well actually we're going to apply for a new boiler, but we're going to hold out because we'll keep it ticking over until we can get the bigger one and come back to you in a few years.
I've just come back to the point Andy's made. I think absolutely great idea, and as Mary said as well, to help connect councillors with communities. So I think that's one of the things on the parish that we've always found, isn't it? You know, that certainly in the past, the parish was quite singing but wasn't as connected. So if you can find opportunities to connect with the communities, absolutely brilliant. I think it's a good chance to do that. I do understand what Matthew's saying in terms of expectations, because I guess the grants that I can envisage that we would consider would be, if they had to change the light in, for example, if there was some issue with the windows, the doors, etc. It may well be, when it comes to something like heating, that may not be something that we could help them with. But you don't know until you ask, until you have that conversation. So I don't think there's any issue at all with opening up the discussion.
I think there'll always be a range of things anyway, but there'll be some simple things to do, and there'll be some like heating that are more difficult, and that's something they can plan for the future anyway, isn't it? It's important that they do something.
Sorry.
That's okay. Just to say that, to Matthew's point, yes, we are all heading for carbon zero. That is the dream. However, we have to be realistic that some people won't get that, but at least if they're doing something and we can encourage them to head that way, it's better than doing nothing. That's my take on it. So it might be that we don't get to carbon zero till 2050, which I know is another target for other people, but so therefore sorry, I've forgotten. Andy. Andy's point, yeah, going and talking to people and getting them thinking about it is a good step in the right direction.
Okay, so I think the other thing on energy was the energy savings booklet. I note that the first draft of the booklet has been obviously published on the website, and there's just a comment from Steve that there's a few drafting notes carried into the final document. So if anyone's looked at it and has spotted anything, I must admit I had a look at it. It's really good. It's
actually finished now.
Oh,
The version I've uploaded the actual complete and utter finished one last week, which is I've printed it off here.
Oh right, okay.
So I know because of COVID that we're not meant to do, but I can leave something. If people want to go and have a look, I can leave it somewhere if you don't mind. I can leave my gel by the side of it if you want. But I printed off a copy of it so that people could look if they haven't downloaded it yet. But it is actually completely finished. There shouldn't be any notes or anything on it now.
Oh, okay, all right. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I had a look at it quickly earlier because I thought, oh, that's exciting. What's it say? And actually, it's really good. It's got all the sorts of things you would expect to see in an energy savings, but it's also got some other sort of did you knows, and it's a very engaging style, I think. So hopefully, particularly at the event in September, although hopefully in advance of that, but there can be a bit more kind of, pointing people in that direction. So I think one thing that I think this committee will need to do, and hopefully I can facilitate this, is link better into the rest of the parish council, if you like, and get the information out there to all councillors as to this is all here, and through the parish council website as well, so that we can start saying it's not just a climate change website that people who are interested in climate change will look at. It's actually, there's loads of really useful resources here that we can connect into, because I think there's an opportunity to just share things more widely. Great, okay. Does anyone have anything extra they want to say about the energy subgroup before we move on? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So we'll move on to the next group, which is... that's my daughter's dance stuff. I've lost my agenda now.
Transport and traffic.
Sorry, transport and... yeah, it's a problem with sharing laptops. Right, transport. Who wants to tell me about transport?
Kath can't be here tonight.
Okay.
She's written a short report, and I said I'd talk to it. And the first item is about the Yorkshire Motor Show, or festival rather. Yeah. And Matthew launched a fantastic campaign, really. And I just, showing pie charts and photographs about what would happen if we didn't change our ways, really. And we talked to, and Matthew would just like to say something, because you taught us all what to say. There were quite a few of us from our transport committee, and Michelle was there, and we had a good time. But just describe it, just in a few minutes, please.
It's we were trying to attract people who are interested in cars to stand about climate change.
Yeah.
So the main thing when you walked past it was to see about electric cars. So we had an electric VW camper van, which was kindly lent by a Boroughbridge company. And we had 3 blocks, one of which featured early 1930s Huddersfield transition from horses to electric to ordinary cars. So that was the Carrier company. And that was taken by a local Holmfirth. So Helen Bray, the photographer in Holmfirth, it was their granddad who was the chief photographer. So that was the way of talking about beginning parts of the change into cars. And it also had coal sacks on the back of these horse and carts, so that was a way of talking about how people heat their homes, and the gas boilers didn't exist in the 1930s and so on. Yeah. So we then had before and after of a Ferrari, which was saying how much better a Ferrari was after being electric, and there was a Lotus Elan, which was so much better after being electric than petrol. So we had conversations with people about that, and as Greg says, we then had a couple of pie charts on the bottom, which was how much CO2 has been produced in different 20-year segments. So when people told us their ages, we can say, okay, well, you're 40 years old, that means you're responsible for about half of the CO2 that's gone into the world ever since the beginning of time. So it puts it into context, and then we say, well, there are two options. You either have a 1.5 degree target, which is what the government has said, which is halving our CO2 use in 80 years' time. So when we're talking about we can't change halls and everything else, it's halving it in 8 years' time, and it's zero by 2050. And that's what the government signed up to. And when we spoke to people about it, hardly anybody thought it was possible. So we then showed the other pie chart, which is what we will do if we just carry on as life as normal. And we then say, okay, well, this is the amount of CO2 that's gone into the world so far. In the next 60 years, it's that and a bit again. So it's 2.5 times, 2.25 times as much CO2 in 60 years' time as we put in now. And we had a little picture of a baby, so there's a big picture of a baby who's my nephew's daughter, who's less than 1. And by the time she's my age, we'll be in a 4 degree C world. And then we asked people what they thought 4 degrees C meant. And most people hadn't got a clue. And then we say, well, that's the choice, you know, what do we want to do? So it was a conversation. We spoke to 83 people. We had about 27 email addresses. Quite a few people were interested in joining Eco Homes. I don't think, to be honest, people will say, yes, I'll do it and I'll sign up, but of course they don't. So we had Eco Homes, we had Zero Carbon Yorkshire, that was the organisation
yep.
I'm part of, which we did. So we had people signing up for that, and we talked a little bit about, you know, Michelle's website, but because it wasn't quite ready, we didn't sort of say, well, join out for that yet. So we had a number of conversations. We had one person who, because they had a Tesla on the stand as well, so we had one person who was asking about that, and later, the following week, he went out and bought one, so that was nice. No commission. So it was interesting. And for the very hardcore people, we had the Fuel Flat Challenge, which is when you're filling your car with fuel, what are you going to say to Mabel, the little baby, about her future as you're putting fossil fuel in your car? And we had a few people have a go at that, but quite hard.
I think Matthew created a lot of stop and think moments. He drew people in.
Sounds like it, yeah.
We all tried the conversations. We did try very hard and succeeded some of the time, but Matthew was brilliant. And he just engaged with people along this line. And the displays were good.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we should be pleased with our impact, really, in what could have been quite a hostile environment, but it wasn't.
Yeah, there was very, very little hostility. I know less than 20% of people said I'm not interested and walked away. So
yeah.
We may talk about this later, it's on the agenda, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'll move on if I may quickly. We've covered quite a bit on the agenda of what we talked about last week, about if it's not far, leave the car. I'll just say a little bit more about the Art Week, because I think we've found a lovely formula there. Mary Kath and I spent a lot of time walking between sites and measuring the distance, and just putting together nice pieces of information and maps with details on for the Art Week to encourage people to walk between events. It was well received, the fringe events, you know, Home Bridge to Flushings and various, and I think we'd like to do that probably every year. I think the more we get into a habit of doing things that raises consciousness, the better. And what else are we thinking of doing, or what are we doing? We didn't quite get the school involved. We were hoping that there was going to be a walk to school day on the 12th of July that would have been quite a large impact, really, and we had lots of ideas for getting it into the press, but COVID has struck and virtually all of the school has closed down, or the ones interested in the Duke of Edinburgh's Active Transport Award that we're trying to launch with Home Perth High School. Well, we will launch, we've got it accepted, we've just got to run it through. I gave a Zoom to 120 students a few weeks ago, and they were very receptive.
Brilliant.
And we had somebody from the region there who said it's absolutely spot on, active transport for a Duke of Edinburgh's award. Nobody's thought of it before, great idea. So we've got a tick for that.
Yep.
And we're working closely with Kieran Machin, who heads up, this is called the PE department. Probably got a different name now, but anyway, sports department.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Okay.
Okay.
But it didn't happen on the 12th, but you know, they are keen, and they've taken some of our posters and they've distributed around the school. You know, that's for, if it's not for Leave the Car campaign.
Sorry to interrupt.
I know it's a bit early to, but I've also sent some electronic ones to them.
Yeah, but I wanted to show everybody because.
Oh, good. Yes.
Kath also asked us to mention we've done these posters which have got limericks on them.
Yes.
So this one's for bikes. Even though it's not very far, Harry goes to school in a car, but he knows this bad habit is harming the planet, so now takes his bike. What a start. So that's one of them. And then the other one is walking. Harry was going to work in his car when he thought it's really not far. He could just take his bike or perhaps even hike and stop the planet from warming too far. So the reason I got these is that Kath said, please can you take them and think if you can think of somewhere that we can put them up? Because the idea is that when people arrive somewhere, they can think, actually, could I have walked or cycled and not taken the car? So, and do you want to carry on with the rest of what's happening with that? Or?
No, other than to say it went down like a storm with the school. They thought it was wonderful, and they've already distributed them all over the school.
We're going
Kath and I are going to be doing them this week, taking them round.
Yeah, to businesses in the home fair. We
Do you
have.
want to pass it round so that people can look at it.
Well, I don't know. Is everyone happy for that? I mean, you know, this is the thing.
Well, maybe if you just
I'm
maybe
gonna
lay
leave
them out on
it
the
there.
table and people can
Yeah.
have a look at them.
That's what I thought.
That's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we're looking at are forgotten footpaths. We've taken photographs of forgotten footpaths, and we're going to have a quiz. We're trying to get people interested. What we want people to do is to walk, you know, leave the car at home and enjoy walking on these often cobbled walkways down into towns and villages, and just raise awareness by having a competition. And Michelle's helping us on that. We've got some nice photographs that we've sent you.
So they're all on the website already, I think. I put them, but I think there's 15 different ones to identify.
15 at the moment,
Yeah,
yes.
and so the idea we'll use that for social media. So it's just a picture, do you know where it is? And then encouraging conversations like, if you don't know, ask your grandma, your mum, people that used to use them every day, and try and get that nostalgia about how they used to walk, and like trying to encourage people to think, actually, yeah, I could do that as well.
Yeah.
So that's the idea behind it.
And the next idea is to focus on bridges that you have to walk over to get into villages and so on, and just get people to footbridges, you know, across streams and so on. So we're going to keep this one rolling, really.
Yeah.
And maybe naming some of the streams and tributaries. Maybe another quiz, you know.
Yeah.
Yes. So
It can run and run, and it's
can run and
easy.
run. Yeah.
It's achievable. It can get people involved.
Yeah, for me, just quickly, I think it's fantastic. I'm just wondering, you've probably done this already. Have you talked to the friends of in the library, the walking group there? Because they can
talk to them, but yes, we should be using Walk as a Welcome.
that's what I was just thinking, because that would be another opportunity, wouldn't it, to get this? Because I think he's done really well in getting.
We're planning to put them, I think, on the notice board. We're going to be, you know, we've got this idea of having a large notice board. We've got some money for it that will show the walking maps to the villagers and some details about where you could get more information. And we have mentioned the walking room in the library, which is very useful. And we've got lots of other ideas about what's going to go on, provided it's not too fussy. Yes. Okay. Michelle and then Mark.
Yeah, just to say that for the big boards, the idea is going to be a poster that actually says from here to here is a mile, so that people get the concept of how far it is, and looking at using images that depict a shop for food or a clothes shop or something. I don't know that
we're looking at it critically. What we're trying to do is not too fussy.
That's right.
Just a key bit of information.
Yeah.
So we haven't quite finished it, and we're talking to you.
Yeah, but that's the idea, is that there's going to be a poster that indicates how far places are from different.
Yeah. But what we may do the latest thinking is to get a lovely photograph of a village, so that it encapsulates, you know, a photo being worth 1,000 words sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
You know, a gorgeous shot of Upperthorne
yeah.
to encourage people to want to walk there,
Okay.
or walk from
Yeah.
there, and so on. But we're still refining it.
Okay, can I bring
Okay.
Mark in?
I think that's more or less it.
Sorry, Greta, if I just bring Mark in, I think you had a question.
I did a lot of walking routes. I did Car Free Day in London, which included mode shift transport and walking routes as part of the mayoral agenda, including Clean Air. So there was encouragement for people to get off the bus that stopped earlier, and we worked out the distance and the percentage of your daily exercise that would be.
Right, and that's what we're planning to do here.
It worked really well.
Yes.
And there was loads of good feedback around that.
Yes.
And people really, it's made it really easy for people to engage with something that's quite a challenging concept.
Yes. It's good.
Yeah, really good. No,
Yeah.
really successful.
How many of us walked here tonight? I left my car about half a mile away, but it was a bit of a small gesture. But it's quite hard to change behaviour, and we need to encourage each other, you know. And we could use this you know, in September.
Yeah, my issue is I want to walk and everything, but I'm always so busy that I don't have the privilege of time in order to do it. That is the thing.
Yes.
I think if you've got time, if I have time, I always walk or cycle or whatever. But often I'm rushing from one thing to another.
The other thing we thought we'd put on this map is possibly not the mileage, we may do the mileage, but maybe the steps, because a lot of people are very health conscious and they count their 10,000 steps. And that may be a good way in. So we're just debating, is it miles, is it steps, or is it both? You know, without it being too elaborate.
Sorry to interrupt. Is there anything from your time in London that you think would be good to share with us? You know, some examples.
Yeah, so we produced best practice guidelines for...
That would be great for us to
send it to
later
us.
on.
Yeah, we were awarded for producing sustainability as part of the MED, but also the team for TFL. So I can dig some of that out.
Yeah, that'd be great if you can share stuff from that.
Sorry.
Yeah, Michelle.
Get to put my hand up. Having lived in London myself, I have to say I hardly ever use the car because the public transport infrastructure is so good. So there is
so that was part of the challenge, is that public transport is so good that you go everywhere on the tube. Whereas if you get off the tube a bit earlier, or if you get off the bus a bit earlier, you'll get your level of daily exercise.
Oh, exercise.
So we put rings on maps to show people if you got off here, this is how far it would walk. We did steps, not miles. And they measured the impact of it as well, about how many people actually, they did a big survey afterwards to see how effective the messaging was. And also similarly to your point before about segmenting that, so you could be more targeted in who you would be able to talk to about air quality impact, mode shift transport, and these different things, and who would be more susceptible to it. It's really interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
We're looking for a new person to join the group, ideally, who's got a passion about electric buses.
Mark, is that something you're interested in doing?
No, I really don't. I like the electric buses, but I have a thing about them as well.
But would you like to join the group?
Not if I have to talk about electric buses.
No. We could talk about other things.
Okay. Well, what's the group entail first?
Sorry?
What do I have to do?
Just come every month to a meeting and take action with
I
us.
can do that. Yeah. I'll do that then.
Yeah. It's to be honest, Matt, it's the subgroups that develop all the ideas into tangible projects and work with
really
Michelle
interested.
to
There's loads of
promote
stuff that
things.
we've done and best practice that we can share.
Well, it's great. Brilliant.
Excellent.
You have a
Some
new
of it will be
candidate for
good
your
and some
subgroup.
of it just won't fit, but
You never know.
yeah, you never know.
Okay, I think that's me done.
Can I just ask about the bike racks? Because that's something I'm not quite sure where that's got
I've
to.
got some feedback about those. It's not being pursued at the moment because Kirklees has taken our suggestion. Yeah, they've taken our suggestion for when we need the cycle racks, and we'll consider them as part of the Home Firth development plan. So it's going to be lodged within that.
Right, okay. Meaning the road scheme or meaning the additional money that's coming towards Home Firth?
It's the road scheme, but it fits.
But weren't some of them not in Home Firth? I thought we had some in New Mill and some somewhere else.
I'm not quite certain about that. It's all to do with money, and I don't think Kirklees are going to give us money for it. But
thought we had
I
money
may be
for it.
speaking out of turn,
No,
or maybe I
we've
have
got,
to come back here.
yeah, we've got the money to cover the cost of the installation. What Kath was talking about was obviously the permission and where to put them. But so it makes perfect sense that it would be done. I can understand. I can understand why they say that. The problem you've got with that is the road scheme is sort of 2 years away, really. 18 months, more than 2 years away. So.
I think the problem seemed to be talking to people in highways. You know, there was money there to put the things in and to install them, but you had to have permission from highways before you can go from them. Yeah, that seemed to be the problem.
Can you ask Kath to give me just get in touch with me?
It's a little bit complicated. She spent a lot of time on this, but I'll
Okay, I think if Kath can have a conversation with Paul, because it might be that even if the Home Firth ones have to be parks, which sort of makes sense. As I recall, there were some other places that were talked about, because we were quite keen it wasn't just Home Firth centric, it was also looking at the outlying villages and things.
Great.
Okay, we will.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, it sounds like that group's very active, which is fabulous, and hopefully we can make some good progress on that, particularly now the weather's sunny. Because I was thinking you were slightly thwarted with Art Week, that the first weekend it absolutely lashed with rain. Because I was going to do one of those walks between venues, but I'm afraid it was too wet for the window I had to do it. Right, moving on to waste and consumption.
Right,
John.
I might have more to tell you tomorrow, because we've actually got tomorrow night a sort of waste recycling group meeting. So, but what's happening at the moment? I know Caroline, who's not here tonight, is still pressing the sort of repair cafe, moving that along. And obviously, hopefully, with restrictions being lifted, it'll be easier to sort of progress that. We're really waiting. I think we had some things going with the fair trade, but the person who's doing that has left, and that's slowed down. But we're trying to sort of engage with the new manager, Karen, on that, particularly on using it as a community hub for sort of recycling. And we also, one of our, Julia Roebuck has been doing some interesting projects with the high school. You might have seen it. It's a project where getting a group of them to do use sort of reused make dresses out of recycled material, and that she's actually had a display in the old market hall there again, trying to engage the young people, particularly with and also with actually charity shops. Interestingly, there's quite a disengagement of people, particularly young people, with charity shops. It tends to seem as that old people use it, but she's trying to get maybe the young people to see that as a resource. And last thing is really is that we've also Kirklees have just produced their waste tracker. It's gone to the scrutiny panel, and they've got that. So we'll have a look at that and see how that's going. So it is quite interesting to see that what the future might look like regarding sort of waste. It's, from what we see, so it's very much waste orientated rather than resource or circular economy. It certainly, I think, would make some changes, bringing in things like food waste and a more intensive sort of recycling. But the hope for me is that, or for us, would be that there's a greater engagement with the community by Kirklees in terms of more of a community recycling, because the issue has always been is that there's very little between your green bin and the household recycling centre. If you can't take one of those two, where do you take it? And we get lots of people asking, what do we do with it in many places? And waste is something particularly that's, it's economies of scale. It's not worth doing things in a small scale. You need a minimum amount. And one of the areas we would like to see develop, and it's something maybe when we get back into a bit more normality, is the concept of circular economy, whereby we can actually find a way that local waste is turned into local resources, is turned into local goods that could be sold and reprocessed and actually put back into the market in here. That's the real, and that's really where it's got to go in the future in terms of all that. So I think this, you know, and I'm hoping obviously tomorrow that we try and get more people that engage in other things than straight recycling into the green bin. It's actually trying to get a wider. We haven't been able to do some of the things we did in the past, like with our festival cups, for example, and doing those sort of projects where we've been able to get a greater engagement with the community because all the outdoor festivals have been sort of slowed down. So we'll see where it goes.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Just to follow on Kirby's, as you say, we're still, the discussions on the waste strategy are still proceeding. There's been a lot of consultation, lots of workshops as well. I've sat in quite a few of them. It's, well, you know, you from the industry, it's not as straightforward as most people think. And there's discussions going on at the moment as to, you know, whether we were the current providers for a relatively short extension to put in something which means more meaningful going forward. The problem fundamentally is that nobody knows what the government are going to do in reality going forward, and that's not just this government, it's actually right across you know, other countries. So there's a real problem in terms of markets, in terms of solutions, etc. Particularly markets, because people don't know what's happening. So that debate's going on at the moment. The consultation on the actual sort of household waste was very good and a fantastic response. I can't remember what it was, but thousands that came. It was a really good response, and that was around increasing recycling. But as John knows anyway, as we all know, you know, when you're looking at the whole hierarchy of waste, actually recycling isn't going to solve it, because one of our problems, and it's not my portfolio anymore, but when it was my portfolio, but people quite rightly getting concerned about pictures of plastic waste in various countries just being dumped, etc. And we were able to trace through what we do Kirby's that's none of ours, because most of it is low grade stuff. The stuff, as you know, we recycle at the high grade. So all of this debate is going on, but I think fundamentally, you know, what's within the strategy is absolutely to increase recycling rates, to ensure that as much as possible we're helping the community in sort of behavioural changes as well. There's also clearly a significant plan around the energy to the waste to energy plant in Huddersfield, and that's to create a district heating system, because there's already a facility to do that. It's never been used, and the idea would be to use that to provide energy for local businesses plus residents within residential properties. So that's wrapped up in these discussions as well. So I kind of go in and I think it was all very simple. We increased recycling, and you suddenly realise that sounds like a sort of like excuses, but I'm really impressed with what they're looking at. Colin Parks, the strategic director responsible for that, has brought in somebody from the industry who we're using now as a consultant to actually drive this. And Colin's very much about delivery. So I don't personally, I don't think we'll change our contract. We'll change our contract. We won't change our partner immediately, personally, but I might be wrong. That's still there. But there's a huge amount of uncertainty throughout the sector, throughout the companies, the key companies within the sector. Is massive uncertainty, because simply the governments, and particularly our government, as well as others, are just not coming up with what they are going to do, what is the approach, what they're going to subsidise, what they're going to do, etc. And that's causing havoc, actually, which you recognise, John, from your background.
Well, so the principles there, when you read it, they've given 12-month and 5-year pledges, but it's actually, we'd like to do this, but there's no actual target, fixed numbers there. And I can appreciate the waiting for the government to sort of say, not only what do you want, but also are you going to help us, because it is a huge cost. You know, if you look at the actual contribution that part of the tax base which goes into waste, it's actually quite significant, isn't it?
Okay, so bringing us back from the solving stuff at government level to small behavioural change that we can encourage in the Home Valley. I just have I've just got a couple of follow-up questions, Joe, if I may, which build on things that I'm sort of aware of or have heard about. One is obviously we used to have the hot recycling directory. Now, I know when that was first published, obviously it will have changed slightly since then, because now I know from personal experience you can't take foil to the fair trader, but you can take it to Hetworth School, and you can't go to Sainsbury's and Shorehead to get rid of your yoghurt pots. So I have about 1,000 in our woodshed that are desperately seeking a home one day, because I feel too bad to throw them in the black bin now I've saved them for so long. So that was one question about the what information we have on the website about recycling and whether it reflects the up-to-date scenario.
Nothing, because I was waiting to get the download of the PDF and see if it's up to date.
Right, okay.
But
is it something we can amend? Or
if I can get the original,
the original plan was actually to fix the document, but actually to have a website page which actually gave updates.
Oh, okay.
And that's what we want to do, but that's one of the purposes. We actually need resources, we need people who are prepared to do that, and we are struggling a bit in that area of interest. So it's trying to get some more active interest to be able to do that.
Okay.
Help in that.
I'm happy to potentially help out with that. I'm not saying send everything to me and
If
ask me
you
to edit it, because I won't necessarily know the information with which to edit it. But
if you get the
we
original,
we should be sharing it, yes.
yeah, if you get the original in an editable format, then you can keep up to date on the website.
Okay, and then my second thing was about, now I remember, and I can't remember whether it's the parish council that funded it or the Bright Green Community Trust or some other body, but Hetworth School were running some sort of take all their food waste from lunches and put them in a biodigester thing. I remember seeing an application for it. I can't even remember if it was approved. Greta, did it happen?
It was for a ridden composter.
That's the one.
Yes, and they didn't get the money from Bright Green Community Trust 2 years ago.
Right.
We applied for a grant recently, which included a bid for that, but it wasn't successful.
Oh,
and I spoke to Mark Crouch the other day to try to encourage him, and he thought that because he'd been rejected for that very item by Bright Green Community Trust 2 years ago, he didn't feel he wanted to put the bid in again. But maybe I should encourage him.
I think he might as well dust off the application. It'll presumably depend on what other applications are received.
But he seemed quite a bit, somehow he got the rejection and he didn't really want another one.
Oh, okay. Well, I suppose
I'll think about
if he's able to understand why it was rejected, I don't know.
I wasn't on a trustee at that point, so I don't know.
Okay. It seems a shame not to apply on the off chance that it may have been because there was lack of funds for other projects, but I don't know. It's just because I was conscious that was something that could potentially be rolled out in other schools if it was proved to be useful.
I think it would be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And what he did want to do as well was to get waste not only from the school canteen but from the local community.
Yeah.
Particularly older people who perhaps didn't have a garden or were not happy about composting, and the kids would go and collect it on the homes. So it was going to be a real community project, and I think it would be great.
Okay, I think if we can encourage him.
But you've got two government there as well, so if you need any support, let us know, both of us are governors in Hetworth.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, I was thinking that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Vice Chair, you have a new role. Encouraged. And sorry, the final thing was just I noticed in the co-op, and again I can't remember if it was the Holmfirth co-op, but I know I've seen it in the Netherton co-op, that they're now recycling soft plastics, or soft plastics in inverted commas, which is crisp packets and things.
It's quite a breakthrough, isn't it?
So I thought that was really interesting. They've got a sort of holder near the tills. So again, that's something we might be able to take a photo of, and I will next time I'm in the co-op and spot it. And encourage people locally to be aware of that, because that was quite a new thing. Once you can get your head around what a soft plastic is.
I think your point's entirely right. After my long ramble was going on, the point is exactly as you said, that we can do things here while the bigger issues are being dealt with separately, and we shouldn't let that stop us. And I think, and explain to people, because sometimes people say, well, why have we got to do it? Surely the sort of government should, well, yeah, that's going on, but if you wait, you're going to miss the opportunity to do so. I agree.
Can I just say, I think that's a positive thing to do. Well, we had quite a few emails in Hot saying exactly what you're saying. We had not few, but not saying, well, we can't take that in there now, or they won't take it any longer. It would be great to get some saying, well, we found a place like the Co-op, why don't you try that? Because that's the sort of thing we want to. We also saw it as a dynamic thing. That some places will stop doing it, and others. You're right. I've noticed that certain supermarkets are now widening out some of the things that they're taking now. And soft plastics is a classic one around here. There was nowhere in Kirklees that you could take it, and certainly wasn't some of the council were taking. And there was opportunities there. So things like that.
Yeah. You're turning it into positive messages, isn't it?
Put a message out that let people tell us where you're taking it if you found a place, and we can share it.
And I think these are the sort of things that in the event in September, there's a great opportunity to say, did you know that in the last 6 months this has changed in terms of you could take this rubbish? Paul, final comment on
just because as a Council Kirklees we get these all the time. Just need to check with the soft plastics where the destination is, because we do not want to be in a situation where we tell people to go somewhere and that stuff is turning up on the shores of whatever, a highland. And I'm sure they would be able to provide you with...
You can ask your pal at the Co-op, Michelle.
Okay.
I'm sure the Co-op would do it properly, but I think that's worthwhile having, because we could actually help them publicise that as well, because people are aware of that and are really concerned that stuff is just being done.
I think you're quite right, because you can't do it as a parish council. We can do it as hot. We would tell them to go over the Barnsley boundary down to Fox. You put it in the
Barnsley knows about some Pacific Islands.
Okay, right. Anything else on waste? We should move on to the final subgroup. Okay, agriculture, food, environment, land use, business economy. I'm looking to you, Andrew, because I'm sure you've got some comments on this one. How
well, I got very much
land use is
going. Gideon's still putting land survey together, so he's pulling information in from all different areas and getting it all down on one map so we can take some information from that. We've had a biodiversity survey done, for which we're still waiting for the results coming back, which we're hoping will give us a few ideas as where we should be with it, a bit more of an understanding.
Will the survey identify opportunities as well, or is it just a sort of stock take of what biodiversity is?
I think it's a stock take of where we started from, but having not seen the results,
you don't know.
I don't know.
That's right.
And I never spoke to them when they came now, because they just went and did the thing.
Yeah.
So they didn't have contact with us. Alison's given me a paper copy of that as well, and asked me to fill it in for our farm. Not too sure exactly what information she's wanting on it. That will be any different to what Gideon has, but I am going to try and fill it in and go around all our neighbours as far as we can within the map. And if nothing else, it might give us something a little bit quicker than what Gideon can do, and it may fill some of the gaps in what he hasn't got for that area. And I'm guessing eventually, to fully fill the map, we will have to do that anyway.
Is Gideon the person from the University of Huddersfield?
I don't think he's from Huddersfield University now, he's separate, but Huddersfield University are also involved.
Gideon's an independent consultant. So.
It is, yeah.
So remind me, what's the involvement of Huddersfield University?
They were certainly interested, again, in understanding, the results more than anything. Well, that's not quite true from my memory, and you might remember, but I remember the original discussions. They were also going to help in some of the analysis as well. So I think it was twofold from memory. The Gideon was doing that, but there was some.
They're also using a drone as well.
Yeah, that's right. They're using a drone to map it. I think the original, one of the people that originally were using dropped out. So, but anyway, that was the connection.
So they've got an app as well, and they've got some students in the area filling in. There's another third way of really mapping it.
Yeah.
So they've got some students interested, and they've done one full farm, and I don't know how it works because the girl turned up to see if we could do it for them, but she didn't actually have it on the phone. It wasn't there for some reason, but they can fill it all in, but just while walking around.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're waiting to see It's like the waste what the government comes up with next 2 years.
Okay. So is there anything anyone wants to ask or update on land use? You got anything to add, Michelle, on that area?
No, I'm just reading what I've written in my mobilisation on the website at the moment, and I don't know if Rob Noble, do you know who that is? Green Space Officer for Kirklees is supporting us apparently. So along with Matt Taylor from the South Pennine Facilitation Group. So I know that Alison's coordinated a lot of people being involved in this project, and we're getting some to the point with the university is that it's a fee plus pro bono work, so we're getting some of it for free.
Yeah.
So I know there's been a big project that she's been coordinating together.
Okay, super. All right, so we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is I should just say, by the way, thank you very much for all of you guys who are working hard on subgroups, and I'd encourage councillors who are new to the committee or haven't previously been able to commit to subcommittees. Obviously, Councillor Busters has kindly gone to specialise in electric buses on the transport team. But if other councillors, now they've heard a bit more information about the subgroups, if you want to or feel able to commit to any of those subgroups to lend your support or interest or ideas and practical actions, you can either contact the individuals you heard from or go through Michelle. And I'm sure Michelle can advise where teams need a bit more support and that sort of thing.
One of them that we are desperate for, and we're going to work with HOP through this, is we don't have anybody heading up business and economics. So we've got nobody reaching out to local businesses to try and work with them to see what they're going to do in regards to fantastic. That's
okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Okay, I'll talk to you about that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay,
great.
Thank you for that.
Fantastic.
Greta, you look like you can say something.
It's just I can see some synergy here with HV CAP, Home Further Climate Action Project. Reaching out to local businesses. I suppose I would like to write a paper perhaps, because I do see a lot of overlapping small groups and initiatives. So, for example, we've got a transport group in HOT, and I think John's coordinating your energy group, aren't you? Between
Francis
parish,
is on the energy.
the parish council and here. But
actually, Greta, we are actually working with people that are on. So you're in the transport group with us, but you're on HOT. That's the idea.
But it may be we don't need a separate HOT transport group, that it's just one.
Oh, I see.
We don't need another, that it's just one group, and it's, I don't know, it's all merging together. And it may be that once a year we have a conference or something that actually shows all the range of stuff that's happening in the valley and how we can really coordinate it. Because I do think there are quite a few separate silos.
But that was the idea of my role, and that's why, for instance, with the transport, I now have identified every single group, hopefully, that, for instance, does something to do with cycling or whatever. And the idea is that we do get them together to have meetings together.
And it may be they join our transport group.
I mean, we can give that a go, but I know that people are very proud of their little group, want to get on with what they're doing, and once you start amalgamating it, people feel like they're... It's an idea.
It's a thought.
Yeah.
I'm just aware of so much administration goes on if you've got separate silos.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Well, let's give it a go. We'll have a conversation about that afterwards if you want.
Yeah, I think as much for, you're right, we want to avoid duplication wherever we can, but I suppose it's about, at the very least, making sure that the activities are complementary and people are aware of them, rather than people sort of with different plans for the same initiative or whatever, overlapping each other.
That's how my role started, was finding a list of everything that's going on, and I have to say the worst was cycling, because there's just so many different little groups doing things for cycling in the valley. And they are a bit insular. It's like, we'll work with you, but I think it'll be a tough order to go, well, why don't you just join up? Well, no, I'm head of that, and that means one of us has to not be there. Anyway.
Okay.
I think it does raise the question of what the purpose of this group is actually, whether it's to do projects or to work with other partners out there to do things, because I think it's an interesting point, because are we here to coordinate and help and support other groups doing things, other organisations, who are actually, they are, as you're saying, they're often in little bubbles in their own area. What we can do, and certainly that's HCAP's role that you'd like to be, is actually more to facilitate, not duplicate, additionality. It's about additionality, really, isn't it? Doing extra things, and we can do a lot of that. And clearly here you've got funding that you can put in as well, because that's a big asset for a lot of groups to do. We don't necessarily think we have to be doing things ourselves individuals, because maybe we're better working with other groups, putting our energies into actually getting other groups to take things up, pick up that's what I see that I can do, is get other people to up and go sort of thing, because there's lots to be done, isn't there? We all know that.
I think that's true. I mean, to some extent, I think you're right. We do need to sort of keep a constant review on what this committee is seeking to achieve, but we've got to be mindful it's only really existed with Michelle on board for slightly less than a year. So to some extent, there's been a lot of sort of the groundwork, and I think it'll be over the next kind of 6 to 12 months that we'll really see, well, actually, what are the key things that we're able to facilitate that if we weren't here wouldn't happen, and is it just about promoting and connecting people, or actually are there certain projects we need to really drive forward with our funding or whatever?
Yes, because a very good example of events that you can do is what Michelle's doing, like the Green Week. You're never going to get a River Home Connection to do an event like that. It's a single, same with, it's actually these multi-faceted events. It's perfect for something like this to do, because you bring the gravitas of the parish council behind it as well. So.
Okay, right, so moving on to item 23, sharing of Home Valley Parish Council content on the climate emergency. This is on the agenda. It says other local councils are inquiring about using the Home Valley Parish Council to produce content of their own work on the climate emergency. So we're asked to consider arrangements for the sharing of our content with other local councils, and Michelle to report.
So I think I've done about 3 or 4 Zoom calls now with other councils, not just in Kirklees, like across the country. Word is out that we are doing good things, basically. And they're like, and so I went through stuff that I actually haven't had a chance to show everybody here, but I have talked about it all. So I was showing them our website, talking about the calculator, all the stuff that I've talked to you about, and the posters, etc. And the first question is, can we have it, please? So the question is, do we want to maintain that it's ours and they can put thank you to Home Valley Parish Council, or are we happy for them to white label the stuff that we've done and modify it for theirs? Because there's a lot of work that we've done that actually, why should they reinvent the wheel? So it's basically, how do we share and distribute what we're doing, because people are looking to us as an example of how it should be done, basically.
Okay, Mark?
I think we should share stuff, develop best practices, guidelines, and share it with people white label. We did it in London for Carcree Day, and we shared stuff with all the boroughs because they couldn't produce it themselves. So we gave them templates, guidelines, how to do stuff, and then they were able to run their own events. And we had a much bigger and stronger impact as a result. And it's the same, I've just consulted on all the Festival 2022 stuff around social value, and all of the key projects for that provide toolkits that then white label, and they're able to deliver to other organisations.
I'm happy with that, and that's what I've been kind of starting to do.
That's absolutely what we said from the beginning of the agreements with Mark. And we, early days, we had a couple of councils and we approached us. That was one down south,
Ashburton.
And we shared that. Debbie Dale was the first one, actually. Debbie Dale before Michelle, before you were enrolled. Debbie Dale were interested, so I went along and presented to them, so they wanted to, and we provided that. So I absolutely agree. I think this isn't a matter of us holding on, it's a matter of us sharing this as widely, and that makes the impact more widely as well. So yeah, absolutely.
So my take was that we just give people everything, because at the end of the day we're all in this together. But I just wanted to check.
It'd be nice if they could say a little thank you, perhaps.
Well, I was going to say that ask them to mention thank you to us, but other than that, we're not precious about it. That's what I thought. And so I think I've spoken to 3 or 4 councils, or more than one group on a call, and they've all been really impressed with the stuff that we're doing. and a lot of them felt like, oh my gosh, we're so far behind you, but hey, it doesn't matter as long as you're doing it, eh? So if we can help them to catch up.
I think that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because sometimes we beat ourselves up all the time, saying, oh God, I haven't done enough or whatever, and then you talk to other people and go, oh, they go, this is fantastic. Just linked to that, by the way, I'm maybe contacting you, Rachel. Councillor Reeves, I don't know how this happened, but he's setting up a discussion with West Yorkshire Combined Authority, the climate change team there, with Kirklees team, and also interested in talking to us, because somebody's asked him about the three levels, if you like, regional, Kirklees and parish. So just again, I'm assuming it was because Councillor Reeves had a conversation with somebody. So Councillor Will Simpson is now the portfolio holder, so you make a contact, and that will be really good again for us, because if that happens, and we can do that sharing at the regional basis at the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. So I don't know what will come of it, but just so you know.
Okay. So in terms of sharing things, we're talking about presumably posters, reports,
documents, website, because I've created our basic one, almost like that I could share with people so that they could just like go and fill it in their own content and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So everything that we've produced that can be replicated, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, the action plans. That's what people are really interested
The action
in.
plans, and also John, I've shared all your very technical stuff with some people who were just as excited about it and could translate it like my good self. Well, that's another thing I've got to sit down with John and Matthew about, all of the technical stuff, so I understand it, so I can put it into layman's terms. But yes, we've got so much stuff that when I showed it, I spent an hour just literally showing them everything, and they were blown away and said, "Can we have it?"
Yeah.
And so I said, "I'll check." I said, "I'm sure you can, but I just need to check before I go doing that." So, and I do know that when we started, that was one of the targets.
Yeah. No? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, two things. One would be nice to have maybe, whether it would fit on the website somewhere, to say these people have helped, because if somebody's looking at us, they might go through there. And the other thing is to mention Zero Carbon Yorkshire, which is a network of organisations. So Zero Carbon Yorkshire has got a buildings group, transport group, whatever, but it's looking at it Yorkshire-wide. Some of the things like the buildings group is a special interest group by itself. So work which we've been doing with buildings should be cognizant of it. And the other ones is just a link. So Zero Carbon Harrogate, for instance, will be doing some stuff. So there's a whole bunch of things. It's all about linking, and it's not being used as well as it could be. So we might be able to learn from other areas as well.
Yeah.
I came as next member of the public to the last meeting, or possibly the one before that, and I was so impressed by what was happening, as indeed I've been impressed today by what's been happening in working groups. But it occurs to me that, the point that Rachel made earlier, that I do feel that the rest of the parish council are perhaps not, they should, they do get the minutes, but I think it would be perhaps we could think about a presentation to the full council about what's going on. But also in a wider sense, I'm not sure that people out there, I know enormous efforts have been made, but I don't really feel that people out there are quite aware of how much, it's early days, how much is going on. I know there's the event in September, but I just wonder if there are any plans further into the future to have something like the event which launched the action plan, or from which the action plan emerged, which John masterminded, I think, really, because there's wonderful work. Communication is just absolutely vital. It's no good as being great, but we need to get it out there. We need to get the masses involved.
Yeah. So I had this conversation with my background. You probably don't know this. I'm a PR and communications person. And the reason that I haven't gone out to the world and told anybody anything is because until such time as I've said before, it's all ready, so that when they start looking at it, we know, and I'm showing you in bits and pieces, but once it's all packaged up and beautifully presentable, then I'm going to really go for it about getting it out there, the message. But well, as you said, it's been a year during the COVID pandemic. So we are actually coming out to a point now where it's like, right, I've got the website, I've got all the little videos for people to share, because we don't want them just to look at it. We want to be able to encourage them to spread the word, to do stuff with it. We want to set people agendas to achieve stuff and everything and be part of it. And now we can, and then we can get the groundswell. If we'd done it too soon and before and tried to tell people, then you'd have got, well, why haven't you done this and why haven't you done that and where's this and where's that? So we're now, I believe, at a point where we're quite happy to go out and start making a noise. And so, to your point, definitely, we need to tell everyone, because there is no point. We're not doing it for these people in this room. That's the whole thing. And we're trying to get everybody in the Home Valley involved. So now I think we can. So you will be seeing that. And any ideas anyone has, you know, we don't give out leaflets anymore. So it's encouraging people to use smart technology on their phones and things like that. And then people go, ugh, I don't know how to do that. It's all sorts of things. But as you said, the event in September will be the start of it.
And I think also, I mean, I mentioned before about working out better ways of how we link into the Parish Council website. And then I think also if we're sharing our information, it's also an opportunity to say, you know, make a big thing of that we've been asked by people from all over the country.
Absolutely,
and, you know, then there's an opportunity to link to them, it benefits, and then suddenly you've got more of a reach outside of just the Home Valley, haven't we?
But I think Councillor Mary is right that we need to do another of those meetings where you've got people to come and sign up. I think after September, let's see what we get interest and stuff like that, and it might mean that we don't have to, because if it's a nice day and people turn up, then we get enough of information, but we'll look at that. But definitely we need to do something like that again. However, you tend to get just the same old people coming along to those things, and my thing is I want to reach beyond the walls of everybody that's already interested coming along. We're trying to get more people.
I'll tell you what, sorry, I've just thought something. With the 18th of September being the Honley show, it might be worth us inquiring whether we could have a stand at the Honley show.
Yeah.
Because that sort of accesses a slightly different group of people from necessarily who would come into the middle of Home Firth.
Which is why we went to the Yorkshire Men's School.
Yeah.
We've already got all the stands, so we're just...
Well, that's what I was just thinking. Yeah. Because, I can dig out the contact for the Honley show and we can see if that's something.
I'm involved in that.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, brilliant. All right. Well, if we can, because I know it's a slightly different format this year, so, but anyway. Right, I'll leave that with you, Michelle. And because it's within that window of the money that we authorised earlier, then if we have to give a contribution to that stand, then we can cover it with what we had before.
Yeah. There's a recycling project as part of the Arts Festival. One of the installations is...
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's also an opportunity to connect, isn't it? Okay. Right, so we... right, should we formally vote on the fact that we're happy to share our materials? So we've got a note of it for those councillors proposing it. Yeah. Okay. Just in case anyone queries that later on. Thank you. Right, local provision of allotments. Unfortunately, both Councillor Sheard and Member Alison Morgan aren't here to report on this, but I will read out the what's in the agenda and comment on any additional understanding that I have. Committee members would like the provision of allotments and community growing projects in the Home Valley to increase. It might be achieved through different approaches. For example, petitioning Kirklees Council to allow repurposing of small parcels of unused recreational land in the valley. Or secondly, asking landowners to allow repurposing of parcels of land for rental as allotments. Or thirdly, by the Parish Council purchasing additional land for the purpose of increasing allotments. And we're asked to consider how we could best facilitate an increase in the local provision of allotments and community growing spaces. Now, I've seen some emails from Councillor Sheard, and she has been liaising with Councillor Paul Dixon from who's part of, WM Sykes, and someone who's been a councillor for a very long time and knows an awful lot of landowners. And he's been asked if he could look into identifying if there are any potential allotment sites that landowners would be willing to sell or rent, I suppose, to the Parish Council. But ideally sell, with a view to potentially the parish, a proposal being put together for the Parish Council to purchase said land. But obviously until we have some identified land, there isn't a proposal on the table in terms of how much it might cost and whether it's obviously got water and all those other things that you need to think about with allotments and suitable parking. And well, ideally people could walk there, but hopefully it's not far from where they are. But obviously it depends where the land is.
On the electric bus.
Yes, on the electric bus. On their electric bikes, they'll be fine. So I don't know if anyone else is aware of any other things on this. But I think we probably... Do you know anything more about it, Michelle, other than what I've just said?
Yeah.
So I think we're just sort of waiting to find out if there is a piece of land that can be identified that then could form the proposal. But the other thing I'm aware of is something called Cinder Hills Community Garden, which is an initiative which I think is led by Kurt Lees, and in the Cinder Hills area of Holmfirth there's some new beds that have been put together in a bit of, not quite sure if it was recreation land, presumably it was Kurt Lees land, and there's a project to try and involve local people in the sort of mental health benefits and growing your own fruit and veg and that sort of thing. It's all got lots of lots of positive benefits for the community, but they are having a day, I don't know if it's a day or an afternoon, can't remember now, on the 1st of August, which is a Sunday, and they've sent the information via the sort of general multitude of newsletters that we all get as councillors, to invite local people to talk to councillors and interested people about the benefits of food growing and the joy that's taken in doing those things and how it's productive and good for the environment and all those happy things. So do you have anything that you know more about that, Paul?
You've covered it pretty well. It's work that we've been doing with Cinder Hills to set up friends of groups. So there's a friends of group in our area, and they're exactly right. The Community Plus is working with them. Claire Baldwin has been doing lots of work with them. So there's a really good group there. I'm hoping to go along on that Sunday. I think it's a great initiative for that area, but also I think it's a really good opportunity to sort of look at something that we could perhaps replicate elsewhere as well. So I think it's not seen as a one-off in that regard. There's also going to be further work done there at some point with the playable spaces, money that's available, for the recreation areas. So that's been those discussions have been incorporated into the sort of design of that as well. So what's been fantastic is you see that link between that community and the council starting to develop rather than the council being the big bad, Kirklees over there. You see that linkage coming there. They're one of our more disenfranchised areas. They're stuck up there, so they don't often get involved in things. So yeah, I would encourage people to go along. I think they've done some really fantastic stuff there. So yeah, and hopefully then we can use that sounds terrible, but build on that group and those people as ambassadors to look at other parts of the valley where we've also got other communities which are struggling in terms of being that little bit isolated, if you like, and not included. So yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Greta was first.
Sorry.
Sorry. Just really about the circular rhythm, really. Right Wing Community Trust put quite a bit of money into that project last year, and they've been drawing on the Eden project in Honley that's also been sponsored very well by the Right Wing community in previous years, that of course links to Hot Wind. So it's that circular rhythm, motion that's happening, and maybe we should find ways of demonstrating that without over-egging it. But the Right Wing Community Trust is very much linked to Hot and to Hot Wind.
No,
and what they've been doing for years.
I totally agree with you. I think it's a great demonstration of the community in its wider sense as well, supporting this work. It isn't Kirklees Council just doing it. Kirklees is just one partner. So you're absolutely right. I think we should. I think that's a really strong message, because we know that we've had discussions with some people who believe that certain groups shouldn't stick their nose in and get involved in whatever. So this is a really good example of that's working. So yeah.
It's been a really good project as well.
Yeah, it'd be good to think about how we communicate that.
Okay, Matthew and then John.
I'm involved in the New Mill Community Garden, and I think the different community gardens tend to be very insular, obviously. There could potentially be an event for us where we say, can we, and you either get them to meet each other, you know, a garden tour where you go along and talk to each other, or something like allotments. They sometimes have a seed day, so people go along and you get your onion sets or something like that. Yeah. It might be that we buy a whole bunch of onion sets and we say, well, we'll sponsor your onions this year or something silly like that. But it's interesting because that is a successful garden which has been going 8 years, which has no budget and no committee, but it has a regular meeting time and it has tea. So you start work at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday and you have tea at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday. So you need access to a kettle and 1 or 2 key people to get it going.
Yeah. I think St David's is quite similar.
Yeah.
Much different.
So it's interesting, how do you actually go from nothing to that? The New Mill one was free land provided by the church. And so it's a very unbusiness-like way of doing things because there is no committee, there's no organisation, but you start it small and it evolves. But it would be nice maybe to facilitate them meeting each other.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I can talk to Claire Baldwin and see if I can do that. So I met Sean last week, we were talking about it, so I'm going to talk down and visit as well. Yeah, I think the more we connect,
Absolutely.
I think that's the whole thing. It's about that connection all the time. So, yeah.
Right, John?
I have 2 points that are related to what we said before. First thing is, do we know what sort of land can be repurposed for allotments? You know, can it be all the agricultural land? Because I'm not clear from what's here, what sort of land it is. You know, the agricultural land, which is quite cheap, and there's quite a bit of it in Holmfirth, for example. A lot of it comes down close to the centre, but it's because it's green belt, it's green, and it can't be. Could that be repurposed? And what's the position of Kirklees Council on this? Will they make it available? I do know from our involvement in the community that if you actually want to get land for community benefits, you have a much stronger case for it than you do if you're buying it or you're acquiring it as a commercial operation and that sort of thing. And all those sort of things, I think there's a legal perspective of this, and I wonder whether whoever's looking at this is looking at those sort of issues, you know, because we know there's lots of land around. It's really what can be done. I know very near where I live, in fact, there was a piece of land which was available for rent for £60 an acre as agricultural land, and I did actually consider whether some of it could be actually repurposed for that. But I was told that you can't just take agricultural land and put a lot or start growing on it. So I think there's a question around the housing. The second one is really, you know, have they approached things like hot edibles, the Wooldale, because there must be a network of existing community growers, you know, and surely, as we just said, they should be networked, and they may have a lot of information and help about these sort of growing things. So I think there's a resource to draw on, and it's part of what Paul says, it's the way of networking all together rather than working in isolation, looking at.
Yeah. No, I think that's very true. I can't answer the question obviously because Councillor Sheard and Alison aren't here, but there's certainly points we should raise with them, so I'll certainly speak to Sarah about it.
But you could well get some help from the council, from the legal side of it, you know, from advisors really, because getting into not deep water, but getting into difficult issues around land, and I'm sure
it's what constitutes a garden.
It's interesting to get some support, some advice. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. One thing I think we've done through Eco-Homes in particular, but opened up some channels in terms of getting that advice as such. It doesn't mean there's money, but certainly sometimes advice is worth more.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Super. Does anyone else have any other comments on that one?
I've just got a question, because everybody's been talking about this evening. You're saying about connecting people and networking, but what is it that we do when we all get together? It's like, you know, I'm talking to all these people, and then I'm doing, for instance, the thing in September. If we get all the groups together, what do we do when we're all together? What is it? Why are we all getting together? because everybody's doing their own thing and they're achieving stuff. So why is it that we get together to do?
Because we've all got the same ambition to reduce carbon, and that is very complementary, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I'd go further. I think that's true, and absolutely, because that's what we've covered. But I'd take a step further forward. It's about broadening that as well, particularly groups like Cinder Hills. It's about building self-esteem, confidence in those groups. It's about inclusion. So what we're doing is a facilitate in a sense, but it's how do we bring those groups in there, because we know we have quite significant pockets of that around the valley, and so it's a combination of both things. So it may, I think for me, networking and connecting people doesn't mean we have to Martha being prescriptive. It's about what they want to do. It may be simple as they just want to have a coffee morning and have a chat about stuff, and then that leads on to something else. And for example, the council is implementing, they're not going to be called family hubs, but family hubs, so there's going to be some services available, so maybe it connects into, there's a whole set of connections that start coming in. So I think, sounds a bit up there in the air, but I think largely what we're saying is they've got to be able to form what they want from the network rather than us prescribing for them.
I think Mark wants to say something.
Yeah, I think you get a level of mutual support from being in the room with people who've got the same objectives. Also, you can share best practice and cross-pollinate ideas. So the chances are that half the problems that we have will already be solved elsewhere. So exactly the same as you're doing, producing all this amazing information that you can share from others. I bet there's other people who've got similar sort of stuff that we don't have.
Definitely.
John? And then Mary?
Just to say, 10 years ago, I went to a meeting in Marsden by Rob Hopkins, who was the founder of the Transition Movement. He was there at the invitation of Mars, as it was then, and there's a lot going on. And there was about 30 people in a room this size, maybe more. And he went round the room and he just asked everybody, tell us what you're doing. And everybody said what they were doing. It was actually electric, because what it did more than anything else as part of a network was just inspire people what was happening. And at that time, there was such a lot going on there, and people took inspiration from that, because if nothing else, just hearing what other people do. You're not on your own. We're all going to try and go and simple. It's very easy to be isolated in what we're doing, because really, as you say, nobody really relates to climate change. It's just an opportunity to share, and it's, to me, it's what they do in the evangelical churches, if you ever had that experience. It's actually that bonding together, the next tier down. It's the people who go out, and the activists. It's getting the activists to work together, and I think that's what networking helps that. It strengthens you, lets you know what other people are doing, gives you good examples and stories to tell to others, and it just gets enthusiasm going on people. So I think there are not too many of them, but having these every now and then is a very useful way of recharging people's batteries in a very difficult world.
We have a similar group for event management agencies and for greenfield sites and festivals, and even though we're quite competitive commercially, we tend to put it as one side, and you get the people who are trying to develop this stuff in the different areas.
Can I just say, I didn't know the answer. I was throwing it out there in the conversation. Mary, what did you want to say? Sorry.
Yeah, so it's slightly different, but Paul has already, I think, touched on this. I think perhaps one of the responsibilities of this group might be to work with those areas that are less well favoured than parts of the parts of the parish. And it's I mean, one area I think is the Kirkroyds, the enormous Kirkroyds estate that really. And there's so little community work doesn't really happen anymore, but I think perhaps one of our responsibilities ought to be to work with those groups where there are less likely to be, well-informed, well-connected, middle-class professionals. I think it's really important, and we have to reach out, don't we, to the mass of the population, and we can't afford, people must not be left behind in this. I think that's really one of my concerns, is that people may be left behind. We may all be doing the right things, but we do need to carry the people with us, and maybe we should target some of these other areas. where again, in terms of allotments and community gardens, there's quite a nice space just off the Cape Royds estate, so, and some of the other estates.
There's some allotments there, I think.
There are some allotments.
But whether there's, I haven't been to them. So
Yes, there are.
And there is council along the road.
And there is council land around the playground. So.
But just very briefly on that, as an example in Kirkroyds, we could run an event at some point, and that event would be around what we're doing, but it would be a community event as well. It would be a fun event, and it could be something there where you get the families and kids to come along. And like you were doing something with the narrative there, we do something which it doesn't have to be the sort of same as we did in the Civic Hall, which is really good, and it's fantastic. We were engaged, a lot of people were really interested and came along and did some great work with us in those groups to pull the action plan together. We could be much more aimed at those families, and part of that event would be very much what we're doing and how we engage them. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, food for thought.
I just think if you can make Cinder Hills buzz, it's a very similar community.
Yeah.
Not dissimilar.
Not sure it's positive.
You can make
Small steps.
I think what Mary said is the key to this group. I think we're all middle class people sitting here and saying we've got to save the planet. The mass of the country are not middle class people. They look at the things that we're talking about and go, yeah, like I can afford to do that. So we need to start trying to engage with them and see how they can actually tell us what we need to do to get them involved. So you've just told me about something I didn't know, which is great, and I'm thinking we showcase and use them as an example to tell the world, look at what great things they're doing and how they're contributing to saving the planet. They probably didn't even do it because of that, but we can tell them that what you're doing is doing that, and then we can go out and then other people like them will go, oh, they're doing that, we can do that in our area. That's the sort of thing.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Thank you, that was a good discussion. Right, so moving on to the final item, which is Yorkshire Motorsports Festival. Two things to note. One is the letter sent by the Deputy Clerk on behalf of the committee of the organisers of the festival, which is in your pack. And the second thing is to note that the parish councils are having an extraordinary meeting next Monday at 8 o'clock. Is it 8 o'clock? Yeah. To discuss the Motorsport Festival and the parish council's involvement therewith. So, but related to this specific, so that meeting will look at all elements of the Motorsports Festival, and there's been feedback from residents, which we'll be hearing, and I know Councillor Bustard and Councillor Wilson have received quite a lot of comments from their wards. So the item on tonight's agenda is really related to the environmental measures element. Obviously, we've heard a great report on the Zero Carbon Yorkshire stand, which sounds like it was well worth doing, which was interesting because obviously we had quite a debate beforehand as to whether we wanted to do it under the banner of this committee. But it sounds like, and obviously one of the reasons that we were rather nervous about it was the short time frame. So thank you to Matthew and others who supported that stand, because I think it obviously proved a useful exercise and an interesting afternoon, and a challenging afternoon, presumably for some of the people who heard things that they didn't know before. So every person who's nudged further towards committing to address climate change is a step forward. So that's good, I think. But we had a series of environmental measures which the Yorkshire Motorsports Festival said that they were going to do. And I know we received literally late this afternoon a response from the festival organisers, which reflected a bit on that. And I don't know whether I've got a copy of it here somewhere. I'll find it. Hang on. Bear with. Have you got a copy of it, Rich?
I've got it here. Do you want me to read it out?
I think are you able to just read out the relevant bits that are about environmental measures rather than the other?
It's a bit long-winded.
Well, it is fairly long, but sort of the key environmental things. Because I know they were talking about how they were going to get vendors to do things. They've
said something about litter. they've achieved their objective. What I can't, I think it's something that everybody's going to have to read, but let me do it this way because I might be able to read it better. They didn't use the Park and Ride plan because they had a reduced number of visitors, so that wasn't forced upon them. So that they didn't do. The carbon footprint is being evaluated, and a contribution to the Home Valley environmental projects will be agreed in due course with us, the Home Valley Parish Council Climate Emergency Committee. They're saying that everything is positive, what they've heard. That's about it. With litter, they complied with all motorsport UK regulations. Vehicles were tested for noise limit compliance. And they had different stewards. I don't know how that affects the noise and disturbance. Yeah, so I mean, basically they say they've just basically gone through and said what they didn't do and what they will do, as in once they've worked out how much they have ruined the environment by that.
Okay. Just before I bring you in, Mark, I've just found the letter, the copy of the letter that we sent to them, reminding them that things that they intended to do. So I'm just going to read those out, just to remind ourselves what they were. So they're going to recycle up to 85% waste with litter pickers leaving the site as we found it. Active encouragement of vendors to use recyclable containers, avoid single-use plastics and use wooden cutlery. Then a provision of a park and ride facility served by electric buses. Then use of low-emission generators to power the festival. Use of local contractors, suppliers and businesses to support the local economy and minimise miles travelled. And finally, use of a professional traffic management company to alleviate congestion. So that was the sort of 6 things that they told us they were going to do, and we reminded them in our letter that that's what you said you were going to do. So to some degree, some of their responses, I think, reflect that.
Yeah.
But Mark?
Yeah, it's one of those reports where you mark your own homework and you come top of the class. My concern is that none of these things reflect industry standards, so there are very, very robust and detailed standards for delivery of exactly this type of event. They don't reflect any of these things. It's as if you kind of make... I know people don't know what they don't know, but this bears no relation to the industry good practice, let alone best practice. And for an event of that scale, it should be, and we should be seeking that an event of this scale with this sort of impact is delivered at least to a minimum standard, and this is way off. It's not. It's a laughable. From a professional perspective,
having met the organisers, I'm not surprised.
Well, again, but this is no excuse. Ultimately, these types of events, and the events industry has really, really worked hard over the past years to clean its act up. And there are guidelines, there are industry standards, and those things are readily available, easily shared. Some of them do cost money, and to organise and deliver an event in a sustainable way isn't a cheap thing to do, but it's something that's incumbent on event organisers as part of the licence conditions. So I've delivered events for Formula 1, Formula E, I did Car Free Day, and we spent a lot of money on sustainable measures to ensure that we were acting responsibly. And I'm just not seeing this here. Now, part of that may be because these people have never organised an event before, they simply don't know, and they're trying, but they don't know what they need to do. But on the other side, you look at it and go, well, somebody should be saying, you should be doing this. Which is, you kind of go, right, where do you... Because this year, my understanding, there was a fixed capacity of 2,000. Looking at the safety advisory group, they're saying there's infrastructure in place for 30,000 people at any one time next year. That's a massive event, and without significant control measures, that's going to have a huge impact on the climate and the environment in the whole valley. A huge impact, and it does need addressing. Otherwise, we're going to let something sort of slip through that's really going to cause a lot of damage.
Okay, Matthew?
First of all, brilliant to have Mark on board as a professional events person. And I think we could almost write a spec Mark's out and say, you know, well done, you put a festival on. It was a bit chaotic. But it actually happened, and there were a lot of people went there, and a lot of people had a good time. We can fairly early on tell them that, great, but next year you have to do it properly, and Mark can give them the guidelines that they have to go to, which should be fine. In terms of the environmental impact, a lot of things which they said were right. The litter picking particularly was very good. It was done very well. Now, it might have been because there weren't as many people there, and therefore the two kids that went around the field keeping it all tidy were able to do it, but it was okay. One of the things that we did when we had people come to the stand was to say how far had they come and had they travelled by car or by foot. So we have a representative sample from 83 people. They did something like 3,000 miles overall to join. So we've got a pretty good idea of the carbon footprint of the people coming to our stand. What we don't have is the multiplier. So I've asked for, and haven't yet got, the number of attendees which came to the festival. When we have that, we can multiply it up and say, therefore, it's about 50 tonnes of CO2. And then it depends what you want to do about it. If they're saying in their website, they actually said they are going to offset and reduce the impact. Now, I have an axe to grind on that because I happen to have a carbon offset company, so we take CO2 out of the air and bury it as charcoal under the ground. So that's a real way of taking the CO2 back out of the ground, which the visitors put there. The visitors are usually the biggest carbon footprint of all of this. And in some ways we'll just say, well, if you look after all the visitors' carbon footprint, the fact that you've got generators on site and everything else, that'll be another 30% or something. Again, Mark will have better ideas. But if they just pay for that, that's great. They could pay for us to do it. It's a not-for-profit charity, so there's no money in it. They could pay for it in Switzerland. There's another company that takes CO2 out of the air, Climeworks. If they did it with them, it would cost about £50,000. If they did it with us, it would be about £5,000, assuming that they had about 6,000 people at the site. I don't think they're expecting to pay that sort of money. I'm not expecting them to do anything. But we may as well, if you're wanting to put a case together, I can give you some reasonable numbers. I've not published it because I was waiting for the numbers, and then I've shared it with Greta and Kath. So I can give you a reasonable idea about what the footprint is big. I'd love to have a chat to Mark, because we'll have some standard things as well.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Paul?
Yep. I think it's useful to have this discussion, obviously this week. Clearly we've got a full meeting next week, so we're going to look at this in detail. I think a number of things we've got to look at obviously next week is exactly what you said, Mark. You know, what's happened, how is it run, what can we do to improve things. Also, you know, clearly what we've got to understand is what are our powers as a parish council, you know, and how do we work with you know, the Kirklees, we've got statutory powers as well. So I think next week is going to be a really good opportunity to do that. So it's good that, you know, we've sort of started that discussion now. And I think in particular, it's good that we've already got some idea of the carbon footprint, which is going to help that discussion.
Would you be able to
confirm
in
a talk with Mark,
and
then the two of us put together an estimate?
Yeah, that'd be really helpful.
So is that the sort of thing you should be putting into all events that are organised in the online?
Potentially.
We've not got the authority to do that, but what we can do is talk to people, and obviously it's not just about authority, it's about influencing people and saying, look, we'll support you. And so yes and no, but what we need to do, if that is something that we need to happen, is to then be talking to the licensing departments and talking to Kirklees and doing it that way. So I think it's twofold. I think it's one. I think anybody who wants to do something would want, you know, if we're talking to them in that way, would hopefully would want to constructively work with us. But the parish council has not got that legal powers.
Some of the events we give them guidance and help them to do that, and we do a huge amount of pro bono stuff for smaller events organisers who won't be able to afford consultants, because it's in everyone's best interest that people deliver things better. But for the bigger commercial events, you would try to impose conditions on them as part of the licensing to ensure that they're compliant.
Yeah, Michelle?
Just want to make a note to what you said, Paul. Everyone seems to think that parish council has the power to make things stop and not happen. So I think part of this whole exercise is a re-education as to what the parish council can and can't do, as well as, you know, putting together a thing, because I think everyone thinks, well, why didn't you stop it? And it's just like, because we're the parish council, we're not the Kirklees Council.
I think we also need to be mindful of the fact that the footprint of the festival, the road closures were in our jurisdiction, if you like, they were within our boundaries, but actually the fields that the event's on are Meltham. So I think we just need to be mindful of that.
It's a popular misconception, and it is part of the licensing, and specifically the TTRO licensing incumbent on Motorsport UK, who are the regulatory body that the Parish Council provides support. It's a condition of the licence that the support has been provided. It's in writing.
But there is a town council in Meltham. I think that's
my point. It's not just we're not the only parish and town council affected by the festival.
It does also say this is also on the approach roads, which include Homford Central and
sure.
It's even if you.
We're getting into a lot of detail.
I think the point made is that, you know, what we should do is talk to Meltham Town Council as well, and I think it's a combination between it. I think that's it in essence. We should be working together. So really.
Yeah.
I think for my part, I think we mustn't lose sight of the people that have been affected by this. I mean, they are complaining bitterly to me, and I know they are to North as well. And to some extent they're always going to do, because they're the ones directly affected. I think we still have to listen to these people and give them some sort of response. What's happened's happened, hasn't it? We can't undo that, but we can certainly go forward and say, okay, if we're going to do it again, this is what it's likely to look like. And at least address some of the issues. Now I know it's difficult to separate the two, and we'll talk about it a lot more next week, but environmentally, the two things that came out to me, they were both environmental, but noise for sure. There were a lot of concern around the noise, despite them saying everything was fine. And I think access was another thing. That's probably something we'll talk about next week.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that, I mean, there's useful discussion, but as Charles quite rightly pointed out, we're having a separate meeting specifically to discuss all elements of it, but it's really useful, I think particularly for the carbon footprint point of view, because that's an element that we can, you know, bring in. So it's reflecting all the different elements of the festival. And also to comment about, would we be looking at the carbon footprint of all festivals? That would be quite, you know, if we did wish to do that, we'd think about the implications and messaging of such things, conscious that there's quite a local drive to be seen as a home of festivals. You know, Home Firth has quite a number of festivals, and we don't want to be sort of, we just need to be careful how we approach that, so we're not seen as something trying to block things. We're seen as something trying to make things work better, rather than trying to stop things happening.
And I have to say, as a person that lives in the centre of Home Firth, not knowing that they did all these festivals when I moved there, that's like 6 or 7 times a year. It has affected your people. What I'm trying to say is we need to be mindful of the fact that that's a once a year thing, whereas if we're going to start going into festivals in the whole of Home Firth, that's a bigger thing to tackle. And there's a lot of them, and they all affect me.
And you love them all.
I actually don't mind, because I'm like, you know, when people go and live near a church and say, oh, can you stop the bells ringing, and they've bought the house next to a church, what do they expect? It's that kind of thing. So.
Okay, right, I will bring the meeting to a close. Thank you for that participation in the meeting and some good discussion. So thank you very much.